Welcome to the February 11th, 2019 meeting of the Yarmouth Board of Health. Let's see, we have almost a full house, which I can speak for myself. It's nice to see people coming forward. Often we're here and this place is empty. So thank you for your interest. First item on the agenda is a public comment. And I've been receiving a lot of emails, CC'd on a lot of letters, and basically there seems to be a little confusion between what a public comment is and what a public hearing is. Now, essentially the first item on the agenda each meeting is what's called a public comment, and this is defined by the selectmen. I'll just read it to you so you get it. And the open meeting law discourages public bodies from discussing topics not listed on the agenda. The public should therefore not expect the board to respond to questions or statements made during the public comment portion of the meeting. Essentially, we're trying to differentiate is that from a public hearing. And that really is a meeting where we welcome the public to come forward and to ask questions, give testimony or whatever, and it's usually relevant to some legislation that's on the table, discussion that any board is making. So tonight, this is not a public hearing. This will be a public comment. So if there's someone here who would like to come forward, the mic is here. Just come up and just for the record, introduce yourself so the board knows who you are. In the minutes, we can put your name in, and it's televised, just so you know. So anyone want to come up? Great. Thanks for coming in.
So good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Jess Oyer, and I'm an attorney with the law firm Fletcher Tilton PC with offices throughout Massachusetts. I represent the Coalition for Responsible Retailing, or CRR, and I'm here on behalf of CRR tonight. CRR, in turn, represents and looks after the interests of small businesses, small retailers like those you have here in Yarmouth. That may be affected sort of adversely by some of the regulations that may either now or in the near future be contemplated by the Board of Health. So what I wanted to present is a basic outline of CRR's position with respect to those regulations. And I do see a lot of sort of e-cigarette products, so I'll sort of confine my comments to that product class because I know those will be discussed here tonight. So with respect to the regulations that have been passed in other towns or contemplated in other towns, generally speaking, the contours of the regulations are that the e-cigarettes or e-cigarette products are removed from the shelves of a certain class of retail stores, being the retail stores such as your convenience stores and your gas stations, which don't actually restrict the people who can walk into the store by age. And they place those products on the shelves or restrict the ability to sell those products to stores that are 21 or older. So stores that actually ID or limit the ability of individuals who are under a certain age, generally 21, and I believe it's 21 here in Yarmouth, from actually entering the store. And whether the regulation at issue pertains to e-cigarettes or wintergreen and menthol products, which is another sort of ban that has been taking place in some other towns or being contemplated in other towns, the CRR's position is that ban, although well-intentioned, because the goal is obviously to reduce youth use of these products, won't actually achieve the goal that you're seeking to achieve, essentially to reduce youth use of the products. So the CRR's position is that a much more targeted and effective way of achieving that end is to enact what's called purchase, use, and possession laws, and that allows the authority or law enforcement here in Yarmouth or in other towns to actually target the youth use itself. So let's say, you have a 16-year-old sitting outside the building right now smoking a cigarette. There's nothing that law enforcement can do about that. They can't confiscate that. They can't issue a citation. If that were marijuana or alcohol, then law enforcement could, in fact, confiscate that and issue a citation. In 45 other states in the United States, purchase, use, and possession laws do, in fact, apply to tobacco. Massachusetts is one of very few states that does not do that. And I think it's important when considering any sort of set of regulations, what incentives and what disincentives you're creating. And if you're not actually disincentivizing the youth use itself, and I don't think that the regulations that are being considered would do that because they sort of target the stores rather than the youth use, then I don't know how effective the regulations are really going to be. And if you look at certain towns, Somerville as an example, after they had passed sort of the initial wave of flavor bans that targeted some of the more unique flavors. They actually noticed a 16% increase in youth use after those were passed. So, going further down the same path, expanding the flavors that you're banning, but still targeting the stores themselves as opposed to targeting youth use, I think is just, doubling down on a failed policy. Another sort of general position is that the distinction between stores and the distinction between product classes is an arbitrary one. In both sets of stores, whether you're looking at the retail stores or the 21 and older stores, an individual still has to be 21 to buy these products in both of those stores. The difference is that in the retail stores, you walk in, you go to the counter, you say, can I purchase one of those products behind the counter? They're ID'd, and then maybe the sale takes place as long as they're above the legal age. In the 21 or older stores, that same ID process takes place, although the clerk is allowed to take the ID at the door. Whether that actually occurs and to what extent that occurs, I don't know. But the difference we're talking about is really a couple steps and a couple seconds between entering the door and getting to the counter where the ID actually takes place. The IDing actually takes place. So we would say that distinction is kind of an arbitrary one, especially when you're considering the compliance rates here in Yarmouth. So according to the FDA data, there's a 90% compliance rate for successfully prohibiting youth access or youth purchase of these products when they come into your retail stores. So that would suggest to us that the youth is actually getting the products by some other means, whether it's through internet sales or whether it's through an older adult that is of age that is making the purchase and then providing the product to the younger individual. And again, targeting the stores doesn't address that, so the purchase, use, and possession laws would be, again, more effective in actually addressing the youth possession and youth use of those products. Similarly, that addresses the same issue with respect to the distinction between stores. When your retail stores are successful to a rate of 90%, why penalize those stores if they're not at fault and take a significant amount of products off their shelves, which affects their revenue and affects their ability to maintain, viable going businesses. Furthermore, the distinction between product classes is important as well, especially with respect to e-cigarettes. There's a wealth of scientific data, especially as embodied in the 2016-2017 survey by the Royal College of Physicians. Now, this is coming out of the UK, but it demonstrated that, several things. A, e-cigarettes are generally used as an avenue away from combustible tobacco usage as opposed to a gateway towards combustible tobacco usage. E-cigarettes have a far reduced or far less significant harm profile than combustible products. And individuals who use e-cigarettes as a means to quit or as a means to achieve full quitting of nicotine and tobacco-related products had a 66% compliance rate, a 66% success rate in actually achieving quitting. And this report actually also demonstrated that using e-cigarettes as a means or as a step towards quitting was as effective as using medicinal products like Chantix. So again, removing the sort of a class of products that has a significantly reduced harm profile from the shelves of your stores, which are sort of more easily accessible by your population, and limiting them to stores which may be harder to access, I think it works a disservice to the population in the sense that you're channeling use back to a demonstrably more dangerous set of products, being the combustibles. So if it's the mentality of a tobacco user to say, I'm going to use tobacco and I'm going to get whatever's most convenient, but I also want to reduce the health of harmful health effects to the extent that I can, so their intent is to go to a local store and get an e-cigarette product, but they don't want to drive 20 miles to the 21 or older shop. By removing those products from the shelves, you may be channeling their use back to combustibles. That's the point I'm trying to make. Lastly, I think it's important to note that, again, the compliance rate being 90%, your local store owners have invested significant time and money in training their clerks, training their staff to successfully and to effectively prohibit the youth from gaining access to these products. And by penalizing them, you're really sort of penalizing a group that is not at fault here. And I would understand if the board were to ignore sort of the business aspect or the business concerns if the board felt very strongly that this was going to be a home run in terms of effective policy. But given the fact that the data suggests the youth are actually getting the products from other sources, I don't think that it justifies the damage or the harm to your local businesses. And the CDC, I understand that there's some criticism of referencing a study out of the UK, like the Royal College of Physicians study, but the CDC also had a study in 2017 relating only to the United States that said that 86% of individuals questioned did not get their tobacco products. 86% of individuals under the age of 18 did not get their tobacco products from retail stores. They were getting them from some other means. So, again, I don't think it would sort of benefit Yarmouth to target the retailers when it would be much more effective to target the youth use itself by things like purchase, use, and possession laws. In other towns, we've suggested the creation of sort of coalitions between individuals on the nonprofit advocacy side, individuals from the Board of Health, and individuals from the retail community. So we would suggest putting together, a coalition of maybe 3 individuals, someone from the Board of Health, someone like Dr. Harbin, or someone that he works with, and then maybe one of your many retailers who are here tonight, to figure out a way that actually benefits everyone, but still achieves the goal that you're seeking to achieve, and that is reducing or entirely, doing away with youth use of these products. And I'll end there. I know that maybe members of the retail community may have additional statements to make, so I'll stop taking up all of your time, but I do appreciate the opportunity here to speak tonight.
I don't know if you're going to be coming back for the public hearing or other people will, but I'm familiar with the 2 studies you quoted. Be helpful to take a look maybe ahead of time. We could provide some studies that would support what you're saying.
Yes.
In reputable journals, public health or medical journals. That'd be great.
Absolutely, and I would appreciate the opportunity to do that. If the board is aware of a specific deadline by which they would like to receive those submissions prior to the next meeting or the next hearing, and they would let us know here tonight, that would be helpful just so I can gather the materials and put that together.
Well, the letter that went out to the individuals who have licenses here, I think gave some dates for the next 2 meetings.
Right. The dates of our next 2 meetings would be February 25th at 4 and then March 11th at 11th at 4. But if you want to submit any information, it should be in the Wednesday before the meeting.
Okay.
That way it can get to the board ahead of time.
That just gives the board members a chance to do their homework before the meetings. That's
Absolutely,
all.
and I appreciate the invite to make that submission.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and once again, we got a big crowd. Who else would like to come up with? Great. Just come up, introduce yourself. Sure, absolutely.
Good afternoon. I've met with you folks before. My name is Sarah McColgan. I'm the director of the Tobacco Control Program for the Massachusetts Health Officers Association. And I'd like to speak to some of the points that the previous speaker addressed. He continually used the word ban. This isn't a ban. This is a restriction. We're restricting. Right now, Yarmouth is restricting flavored tobacco products to adult-only retail tobacco stores, with the exception of mint, menthol, and wintergreen. If they remove that exemption, those products would be restricted, again, to adult-only retail tobacco stores. So folks who use mint, menthol, and wintergreen tobacco products, whether it's combustible or electronic, could go to an adult-only tobacco store and purchase those products. So it would be helpful if folks would stop using the word ban and use the word restriction, which is what it is. PUP laws. PUP laws are pretty typical for the tobacco industry. They want to take the onus off of themselves and put it on the youth that they've gotten addicted to their products. We've seen PUP laws come up time and time again. There are 19 cities and towns that have a youth possession policy in Massachusetts, but only 3 of them are enforcing it that we know of. and we're not even sure if those 3 are actively enforcing it. Again, it deflects the responsibility. It puts it on the youth. Board of Health staff are not trained or equipped to go up on the street and approach a youth, so that leaves it to your police department to do. If this board were to consider pup laws, the first thing that you should do is talk to your chief of police and find out what he or she thinks about pup laws, whether or not the department has the ability to stop every youth who's walking down Route 28 smoking a cigarette, issue them a ticket, probably call the parents, do all the other things that they have to do. A Board of Health staff can't issue that youth a ticket because they have no authority to ask for identification like the police department do. So the youth could say, give them some fictitious name if they wanted to, and there's nothing that the Board of Health staff could do. So in many communities, when the issue of pup law comes up and a police officer's in the audience, they talk about it, and they talk about what a nightmare it would be for their department. Disincentivizing youth, and Somerville has an increase after their ban. Again, he uses the word ban. Historically, every public health law has resulted in decreased tobacco use, but it's not overnight. And any public health law, whether it's or any public health policy, whether it's increased walking, more sidewalks in a particular town, to hopefully have some impact on obesity, that doesn't happen overnight. Needs to have some time. Whether or not Somerville's rates will come down will be seen. Whether or not Yarmouth's rates have come down since you folks passed the ban in, I believe, 2014, I think. We don't know yet, but I think it's still too early to tell, and an unrealistic expectation that these things will happen right away. 90% compliance rate in FDA compliance checks. It's probably true. I look at the FDA list every month, send out violation notices to the boards of health, which let you know which stores in your communities have received a violation. And I haven't sent very many out to Yarmouth, I don't think, over the 8 or 9 years. So you probably have a very low sale rate in an FDA compliance check. It's a little different. The youth that are doing the FDA compliance checks are not youth in that community. So things are a little skewed with that. Hang on one second. I've got too many things to counteract his arguments with. I'm not finding it really quickly, but so maybe I'll move on. The FDA sales rates are not a good indication of what's going on. They'll come through Yarmouth maybe once a year, once every 18 months. And that's not a good snapshot of what's going on in town. Your local compliance checks also are not done real frequently, so also may not be a good snapshot of what's going on in town. I know what I wanted to say. The average youth smoker or vapor, when they come in to buy their product in a store, is probably going to lie about their age if they're asked their age, and they act a little more savvy than compliance check kids who normally are not tobacco users. So it's kind of a different, it's the best way we have to measure what's going on in the stores, but it's not an accurate measure of what's going on in the stores. The UK study. The amount of nicotine allowed in e-cigarettes in the UK is far less than the amount of nicotine, unfortunately, that this country allows in electronic cigarettes. That study was published in, what was it? Was it in JAMA? And then there was a contradicting study published in the same medical journal. So the UK study is not something that we would hang our hats on. Social sources. I don't remember the number that the attorney put forth as far as how many percentage of kids that obtain their tobacco products, which includes these cigarettes, in retail stores or from social sources or whatever. But the Truth Initiative did a survey in April of 2018, so it's a very recent survey, and certainly after the advent of Juul and the explosion of Juul. They surveyed 1,000 12 to 17-year-olds who had used Juul in the past 30 days. 74% of the youth said that they obtained Juul at a store or retail outlet. 52% reported that they received Juul from a social source. When I went to school, 74% was definitely higher than 52%. So we're concerned that the industry is constantly saying that youth are not buying their products in stores. They're getting them from older kids. They're getting them from parents, whatever. And that is true. That does happen. But predominantly, kids are buying their products illegally in stores. And then lastly, forming a coalition to, I believe that's the word he used, coalition to study this measure before the Yarmouth Board of Health would go forward. That's shades of the 1990s and whether or not we should have smoke-free restaurants. Well, let's form a study group and talk about it first. It's typical of the tobacco industry to kind of put things off. Again, it deflects the attention from them. Folks can talk about it and see what happens with it. And so we think the studies are out there. You've kind of formed a coalition here to discuss it. You've allowed us all to come and give our input tonight. So I don't think that a formal group is probably what's best in this situation. I'm going to close now, but I also have comments regarding arbitrary. He didn't use the word capricious, which is interesting, because usually they say these regulations are arbitrary and capricious. So, you know, he and I could both go on probably all night. But thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you. We're still in public comment. A lot of people here. Great. Somebody else. Come on up.
Yes.
Just introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Mohammed, and we have a small business in Yarmouth. And it's very small things that when you guys banned in 2014, most of the retailers suffer with that ban. And we cooperate with that. We didn't resist anything. We said, okay, if it's harmful for everybody, so we are with the law. Now, situation we are in is everybody in a whole journal, we lost 20 to 35% of business as a resident of Yarmouth. So now we are running the small business. We live in Yarmouth, and we are paying the higher price because we have to pay the bills for our houses, for the businesses, and all those. And the neighboring town, you can buy anything. And we are talking about the Juuls. The most flavor this sold in neighboring town is mangoes and all the other stuff. The stuff we already banned here, we are not selling those stuff here. So mint and the menthol is a whole variety of other cigarette involved in it, tobacco involved in it, and plus the Juuls, and plus another one too. So we are already banned for those not to use those things. So I don't like the people, kids go to the yard, next town, and I witnessed myself last night. I go to see one of my friend, and the guy is sitting in the van, and they borrowed the whole case, and they distribute each other. They are the kid from Yarmouth or somewhere else too. So they are buying from the other town. So as a whole, for us as a Yarmouth, it's very tough. When we are in the middle, you can buy from the Dennis or you can go any other town, and they are not doing anything, and we are losing the base. One customer, one kid, whoever comes to buy one, like before 2014, multiply by 5 times. He is not buying one stuff. He came back again to buy the soda, to buy the chips, or lottery, or something else. Now that whole business for 5 times is gone. Because now he go to the other town, he producing all the business which is supposed to be here is going to the next town. And over there, they are going every single things. They are buying their tobaccos and all other stuff, whatever they needed. So in that case, so we have to look on oversight too, that we are facing, like, if we are doing that stuff again and again, so where we gonna be, we have every single things to face too. Like every human have the bills to pay, so we have the bills to pay too. If we are not making enough, so how we gonna be open our doors? Our rent is up, electricity up, every single thing is going up, but our income is going down because what choices we have. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Al Naum. I own 2 property here in Yarmouth.
Welcome.
I invest $3 million on those 2 property, and we start having those issue with the cigarette and stuff. We, when you decide 3 years ago to ban, not anything else, banned to sell any flavored tobacco and all those wraps, and put it up to 21, we all agree. We lost a lot of business, like the gentleman said. That's fine. We suffer with that, but that's fine. Like he said, everything increasing, including real estate tax every other year. You guys increasing it on us, and you're trying to push us out of the town of Yarmouth. Hyannis, just a month and a half ago, they turned down what they asking for on the flavored tobacco. They increased it to 21, but they kept all the flavored tobacco in there. Why we need to start with us? Why it has to start with us? Let us start it on those big cities first, and if it's work and it's better, then we'll go with you guys. We are against the smoking, but I'm 54 years old, and I smoke flavored tobacco, and you guys, I live in Yarmouth for like 20 years. You're telling me to drive somewhere else to buy it. The lady said there is a tobacco store especially for that to go to. It's like 5 miles from my house. I don't want to drive 5 miles from my house to get it. And they saying tobacco stores, they are more secure than convenience store. Convenience store doesn't sell the cigarette on the shelf in front of the kids. The tobacco, it's behind the counter. It's locked. It is locked behind the counter. No customer allowed to go behind the counter. What the difference between convenience store and tobacco store? Or liquor store. I don't want to move from our conversation, but liquor store have liquor everywhere in the store. Any kid can walk in and steal something, put it in his pocket, and leave. Why they don't put it behind the counter, put the liquor too? Why? Why it's us all the time? You guys against us. We are with you. We're willing to work with you. We're willing to not put in anything on front of the counter. But why are you doing that? Because of some organization coming from off Cape somewhere. They don't know how much we suffer every year here. We suffer a lot every winter. We cannot pay our bills. And you guys gonna move rest of our business to different town? Already they stopped the permit. I almost lost one of the permit because I have a tenant. Bruce knows that. I have to pay $10,000 for Speedway to get my license back because they did a limit on cigarette license and for 30 license in the town without me letting me know. Without letting me know, I'm the owner of the property. I have a tenant. They said they sent it to all the tenants. My tenant didn't receive it. My other tenant didn't receive it. Why? I think it's not up to anybody from off Cape, from any other town, to decide if we ban it or not ban it. It's up to the people who live in Yarmouth. You want to do it? That's fine. You make a public hearing in the school, Marikis, have all the people of Yarmouth go and vote if they want it or they don't want it. It's not up to anybody else. We live here. We're going to stay here. So it's up to us, not to the people coming from Somerville or from Boston or from anywhere else. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else, please? Great.
Excuse me.
Good evening, and thank you. Tom Nicanel from wonderful village of Bass River in this beautiful town of Yarmouth. And I want to thank you all for volunteering on this committee, this board, which is very important to our town. Our volunteers live in the community also, and we thank you very much for trying to do what's best for our community. I just have a little point of order as far as the number 3 on the agenda. It was a listening and education session, and as far as I know, the listening would be for the board, and I don't know who's presenting or what's the communication, but the public comment up front is where everyone gets a chance to talk. So later on down the agenda, you won't be able to talk, so this is your time to voice your concerns, and you should come up and talk. But as far as number 3, you guys are just talking amongst yourselves today on that, or how's that listening and education? Is that for you folks from a gentleman, or?
It's mainly us listening and people at home and anyone in this room. Hopefully, we're going to be learning. That's
Okay.
what we're doing tonight.
With regards to what was on there, the menthol and mint and wintergreen. And then you'll be having another session, maybe a public hearing later in a week or two, or is that how
Well,
that
there are
works?
2 that are scheduled. Want to just give the dates again, Bruce?
Next Board of Health meeting is 4 p.m. February 25th, and then there'll be a second one on March 11th at 4 p.m.
And that's
Both
when,
discussing tobacco.
thank you, and that's when you have engagement
Yes,
between.
and
the-
a letter was sent out to all retail tobaccos
Right.
explaining all that.
Yeah,
And that is a public hearing. What we're doing now, as
Right.
I said, it's different. It's public
Right,
comment.
absolutely.
That's
yeah.
all.
I just wanted to make sure I understood it correctly and give all these people a chance to talk. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anyone else? Otherwise, we're going to move along on the agenda.
Good evening, Board. My name is Paresh Patel. I own a 2 convenience store in Yarmouth, almost about 15 years. So, as a retailer myself, I'm totally against restriction or ban on menthol product or main product. A few years ago, you guys were talking about the 18 years old brain is not developed fully, and you wanted to raise the age to 21. So we agreed with you guys. We changed that. We followed the rules. We stopped doing that. If I'm 21 years old, who are you to tell me what I can smoke and I cannot? The product I'm smoking, it's legal by the federal government, and it's my choice to smoke. Why anybody else wants to tell me I cannot smoke it? Why someone wants to tell me I cannot sell it? I'm not doing nothing illegal. The previous speaker said that convenience stores are the one who's selling to minor. 100% wrong. I'm not going to jeopardize my $1 million investment to selling it to minor. You guys are policing us. You suspend my license, you give me a penalty, 2-3 times I lose my license. Why would I do that? Who police the kids? Not you guys, not the police department. Every single kids come into the store, first thing we ask them, can I see your ID? And that's every single day, 16 hours a day we do that. Nobody else does that. Nobody in this board besides the retailer does that. You guys don't do it, police department doesn't do it, we are the one who does it. Why you wanna put the ban for the flavor product while I'm 21 years old? You guys said it 18, we agreed. We had a medical research, brain is not developed, kids start smoking at 18 years old. Okay, we follow you guys, we did all that, but we are totally against it. 21 years old should have his own decision what he wants to do. Not doing anything illegal, it's perfectly fine. Tomorrow, I'm not sure about Yarmouth, but there is a marijuana shops popping up left and right in the state. 21-year-old can go into the store, get a marijuana, no problem. Get a blunt wrap somewhere else, smoke a marijuana, no problem. Someone wants to buy a menthol cigarette in my store, and you guys wanted to put a restriction on it? It's not fair to us. That's all. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the second item here on the agenda. This is a discussion. This looks like a FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, tobacco violation. And the site is Route 28 Service. It says 601 Route 28 in West Yarmouth. Bruce, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, hi. Yes, this is an you can, yeah, there you go. This was an FDA compliance check, not part of our regional county check that we can do enforcement or a Board of Health check. The FDA, as that we heard earlier, do their own checks, so we can only issue we can't even issue a warning. They'll do further FDA violations. But our concern is just bringing you in because this is your second FDA violation, and you have previously 2 Board of Health violations where you've had a suspension. Mm-hmm. So our concern was, what steps are you taking that we want to make sure we're trying to work with you so that you don't get yourself in a position of a heavier fine and a larger suspension. So if you could just tell us what steps you're taking to prevent that.
Hi, how you doing? My name is Charbel. I'm the manager at West Yarmouth Mobile. I always, every week, I tell my employees, check ID, check ID. I always tell them every single week. I even have the signs up in front of them. You got sticky notes, check ID all over the cash register. I do it every single week. I even have my sister, she helps me out. She makes sure they check them. They always do good, but I had this girl, she doesn't work there anymore. They came on a Friday night, and she sold an e-cigarette, a vape cigarette to a minor without asking ID. 100%, there's no excuse. She should have checked the ID. But like I said, I make sure every week I put it in their heads, you got to check ID. Doesn't matter how old they are. Even if they look 30, 40, you got to check ID. Especially now 21 plus, that's very important. But like I said, I'll keep doing my best just to remind them, keep checking IDs. And, like I said, I have a lot of, signs in front of them, 21 plus, check ID, make sure you check every single person's ID. And, I'll do my best to make sure they do that. Okay. And sorry about that.
Right. My concern, I just looked back in the record.
Yep.
This is, what I came up with in January 27, 2016, was a violation that was from the FDA as well. Mm-hmm. June 2nd, 2017, Cape Cod Regional Tobacco Control, you had to pay a $100 fine. Yep. February 13th, 2018, this there was another offense, and it looks like you paid a $200 fine, and you had a 7-day suspension, which must have been a fortune for
Yeah,
the loss.
that was, yeah.
So it's hard for us to have confidence in what you're doing there.
I understand that, but like I said, from here on out, I promise there would be no more issues, and I make sure they check every single ID, every single person that comes in the store. All right, it was a person maybe mistake. She should have checked it. It's her job. She didn't check it. It's I got to be better at it. I got to be right on the employees. So about that. Sorry about that again.
Yeah, I mean, these are town regulations. I mean,
Yeah.
you can end up getting a huge fine and a longer suspension.
I know.
So what are some of the specific things you could do to turn this around?
Maybe I can. Like I said, I gotta figure something out. More than speaking to them, I gotta be able to maybe do a little. I gotta figure something out. But by telling them it's not enough, maybe I'll put more signs up. I'll train them. I'll do like a weekly train. Something like that.
Does your cash register ask you that you've checked ID, that you have to put something in the cash register? Yes,
You don't have
no?
to put it in the register, but I like I said, I have the sign in front of them.
Because some registers are set up that way. Some
yeah, you
stores have
scan
that.
it and stuff. No, we don't have that.
And it's more expensive, but what you're getting into.
Yep.
But at least mentioning, weekly, if not more often, to the
Yeah.
people that they need to do this, how important it is to you, that they need to know how important it is. Obviously,
Yep.
is it in their employment contract or anything?
Yeah,
do they know?
they have a contract, but it's usually the new girls that I bring in. They're usually the ones that make that mistake. I've had the girls and they've never made that mistake. So usually it's the newer girls. You explain it to them, but sometimes they just don't do it. But like from here on out, I'm definitely do a better job.
Okay.
Do you occasionally watch your employees? To
Yes,
see
yeah, I
if
would.
they-
Yeah, sometimes, I would go in the store and make sure that they're doing their job. Because I'm in the garage side, so I'm always in the station. So I'll just hop inside randomly and make sure they're doing their job.
Do you have video that you can spot check
Yes.
from time to time? I know some stores have that and they spot check.
Yep, yeah, I have videos, cameras all over the station. Yep, I can do that.
Just trying to work with you on this. When we don't want to see
I
you again.
understand.
We're very surprised when the FDA came by and
Yeah.
get that. So
I understand.
you got a lucky warning there. Well, I think
Yeah.
there might be fines associated with that.
Yeah, I got the letter earlier that sent them a warning letter. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Any comments from anyone else on the board? Okay.
Maybe some of your colleagues would have some suggestions too.
Yep. Thank you. I appreciate it.
There are ways of educating your employees. I mean, I think it's a good idea. So some of the
Yep.
other locations are doing a better job.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll definitely do a better
All
job
right,
from here
stick
on
with
out.
it,
Thank
okay?
you very much. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
Okay, thanks for coming in. Okay, third item here on the agenda. This is, as we've been talking about, listening and educational session, tobacco board discussion, and what's listed is vaping, and the other is flavored tobacco, menthol mint, and wintergreen. Director Murphy.
Yes. The first educational speaker for the board will be Tony Morrison, the principal at DY High School, just to give his reflections of what he's seen over the last year on vaping and tobacco within the high school. Then we have another speaker, a couple speakers here also.
Get out of your way, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Sure. Have a seat. Thank you for coming in.
My pleasure. Board, ma'am, ma'am. Okay. Well, unfortunately, what I can tell you is that these products here have increased in use in the high school. I know a gentleman before talked about, I guess, precautions, not precautions, putting it on the youth. We, unfortunately, at school, we have to do that. That's our responsibility, to make sure the kids are as safe as possible. But just like back in the day, when kids smoked in cigarettes in school, now they prefer Juuls. So where we used to find a lot of cigarette butts back in the day, not so much now, because smoking's down, so that's good. We do find a lot of these around. But someone else said, where do the kids get them? Well, they can buy them just about anywhere. They do buy them online. The most popular ones are the Jewels, which you can buy in retail stores, but that's the way it is. So just to be on upfront, they have increased in use. Some schools, if you saw the news throughout the weekend, a number of schools across the country are dealing with the same thing. We've taken to ordering, we haven't yet because we haven't made the funds available yet, but for detectors for vape. We used to have smoke detectors in the bathrooms. Now you need vape detectors. So we'll take donations of any of those that we can.
They're expensive, aren't they?
They're about $1,000 a unit. They're getting better, so I'm told. Going to contact my colleague in Plymouth. I know one of my colleagues here at Cape Cod Tech has them. But if the Juul company wants to do something proactive, we'd be grateful if they would donate at least the detectors. Because we are, unfortunately, and I hate to say it this way, but we have to punish the kids that are caught. Consequences more than punish. The consequences are progressive. They start at a Friday school, or in some cases a Saturday school, and if you continue to use it, you could be suspended. So, again, it's a societal problem. It's no different than smoking when, again, I was in school, or some of you folks were in school. It is a personal choice, unfortunately, but the number one reason I think that's appealing to kids is this is kind of cool. You don't think you're going to get cancer, or at least I don't know. We need to do a better job of educating our kids, but the number one thing is it's cool.
Do you confiscate the units? Is that
If we
possible?
can, yes. I mean, we don't have policemen or people manning inside the bathrooms. We have changed our policies so that we can try and make them more healthy by monitoring the hallways and so forth, as we do always. But it is usually by chance that we do get them. But we do, and the kids know we're out there.
Okay.
Yeah, perhaps you can get together with Bruce and myself, and we can talk about maybe what we could do educationally, maybe for the
Yes,
schools,
sir.
okay?
And we are working on it, and again, across the nation it is. It worked for smoking. It's down quite a bit.
Yes. It's
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
Appreciate
Thank you very
My
much.
pleasure.
Okay. Do another speaker? Who's on the list?
Yes, Dr. Hartman's here to speak. He's probably the main speaker to speak on tobacco education, tobacco concerns, menthol, and vaping.
Okay, great. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being such a progressive town that went to 21 early. Boston was 85th. I think you were in the 30th range, 20th or 30th. So many of the big towns did not go until the smaller towns went. So you do have a major influence on what happens. And remember this, what you do here resonates throughout the entire Commonwealth, not just your town. Even if towns abutting you haven't done this, it makes a huge difference. Needham did this in 2006. I picked it up in 2012 after I got my master's at the Harvard School of Public Health on health and social behavior. I'm a pediatrician who's been in practice 32 years now. And when I got my MPH, I came back. Ironically, I live in Needham. And when I looked at the data, I was so convinced. I partnered with a Harvard professor of pediatrics, and we submitted this data to New York City. And New York City was the first city in the country to go to 21. Now you have multiple towns going to 21, and you have 6 states now that are 21. We were number 6, sadly. I was hoping we'd be number 1, but we are not. But we are still a very progressive group. Let me just also mention a few things. Any data you get from the UK is skewed in some ways. Number one, when you look at the data, like the most recent New England Journal study says it was 2.5 times more effective than NRT, nicotine replacement. 2.5 times more effective as compared to what is it effective against? Well, you're looking at e-cigarettes being effective in getting people off tobacco a little more, but not off nicotine. And in fact, if you put nicotine together include nicotine in that with tobacco, NRTs, when I looked at the data, and I sent this off as a commentary too, was twice as effective than e-cigarettes. Because you know what the problem with e-cigarettes? 80% of the people who started with this at the end of the year were still using e-cigarettes. So they were addicted to nicotine, whereas the NRTs, only 9% who had been using the product had continued to use NRTs. So it was highly effective NRT, while the numbers are small. And let's remember this, 10 to 20% of people. It's not a huge number of people who are going to get off anyway. The key to this process is stopping the initiation. The most vulnerable, excuse me, I'd like to ask the board a question if you don't mind. What age can you rent a car? Does anybody know?
21, 25.
25. Okay. Do you know why? 25.
21. 25 is cheaper.
No, it's not because it's cheaper. When the brain neuroscientists went to the car rental industry, they asked, why did you do that? They said, simple. The crash rates haven't dropped significantly till 25. So the brain neuroscientists, people like at Harvard, sat back and said, what are crash rates a measure of? Judgment. Where's judgment in your brain? The prefrontal cortex. So when they did serial functional MRIs of the brain, guess what they found? The car rental industry was right. 25 is when we are neurologically full adults. Physically 18 maybe, but not neurologically, we are not. And as a result of this, the scary part is the most vulnerable age group to nicotine use is between 12 and 18. 90% of lifetime users of nicotine began before the age of 18, 95 before 21. And so keep this in mind that who's being targeted is kids. Have you seen a Juul before? Have you held a Juul?
Yeah.
Could I pass this around? Do you mind?
No, I got a couple right here I can
All
pass
right.
by. Go ahead.
This is a pack of cigarettes. This has propylene glycol, car antifreeze in it. It also, if it's heated high enough, it may develop into formaldehyde, which is a carcinogen. It also has chromium and nickel in it, and when it's heated, it leaches the metal into the solution, which you inhale in your lungs. You inhale this in your lungs, over time, it's going to accumulate, and you're going to end up...
Just show how you pull the pot right off to put
I did.
the Juul.
All right, sorry, I thought I did. Well, here, the Juno is a little better looking at it, and... because it's a little bigger, all right? So what you're dealing with here is a toxicant. This is very toxic, with mint and menthol in it, too. Menthol and mint are toxic to our lungs as well. And I'll produce some data with that in just a second for you. So last year, Juul made $2 billion. Altria, which is Philip Morris, just bought 35% of the stock because they're going into the business of vaping. Tobacco is known as a losing proposition. So when you look at Juul's website, and it's a very deceptive thing, its mission is to get people off nicotine, or off tobacco. But when you look at its Facebook page, etc., what you see is Katy Perry, who was on the page showing off her Juul. This enraged our Attorney General so much. In fact, I was there with the Attorney General's press conference, and the team I work with had spoken to her quite a bit. This is the press release when it shut down the two largest internet people selling tobacco, vape in Massachusetts. And this talks about why she did it. She was the first to sue Juul, and they're suing Juul on the basis of misleading marketing for minors, not for adults. So I will leave this information for you to review as well. I was just my past history. You're about the 180th Board of Health meeting I've been to. I was involved in the Tobacco 21 campaign and was on the floor when the House passed it 147-4. Dr. Winikoff and I have been working on this for 6.5 years, and we got a standing ovation. We started to cry on this. This was this past summer. And I am so angry about vaping and what it's done to our children, because now the vaping is at the level of high schools smoking in the 60s as well. We're at about 28% of high schoolers are addicted to this garbage right now, and it's almost all due to Juul at this point as well. So what else do I have to do here? There were some other things I wanted to say. 75%, the data that Sarah just showed us, in fact, 75% of kids get their material from retail stores. That survey she did allowed you to check off as many different options as you want. It wasn't just one option. So that's why when you said 75 plus 52 is 127, not 100%, it's because you're allowed more than one option to check off at the time. Again, PUP laws are not advocated by the American Academy of Pediatrics. In fact, they're opposed, and I can send you information about that online as well. And let me go through what the products are here so you can see, if you don't mind, the different types.
Yeah. Just speak into the microphone on the backside. There you go.
All right. So, as you know, this is a Juul. Juul's the most popular in the United States. Probably 70 to 80% of kids in Massachusetts. My practice has 14,000 kids, and I see adolescent males all day, the ones who don't have any frontal lobes. and as a result, they all have Juul. Almost every single one I talk to has Juul, tried it at least. And the ones that are addicted are horrendously addicted. So the second most common one here is the Sorn. Yes, these are found in vape shops, not yet in convenience stores. That's how this first started, Juul, and then it went to the convenience stores. These are a little different because you can put 15,000 different flavors into this. Okay? In California, this is bypassing Juul right now because of the variety of flavors. I'd like to ask you all to take a second and smell crunchy French toast. A quarter teaspoon of this killed a 2-year-old. 2 teaspoons will kill you. So let me show you. Let me have you smell and get your impression of this.
That'll wake you up.
Now, how this all started was when candy cigarettes were banned in 2009. The industry diabolically decided to say, all right, what's the definition of a cigarette? Let's get around that and make little cigars. So what they made was Dutch chocolate, cognac, vanilla, and pineapple as well. So this is where it started from, and this is where it's progressed to at this point. Because now combustibles are bad, but nicotine is clean. It's just like caffeine. All a lie. And I'll tell you more about the damage caffeine does to you as well. And feel free to pass around the Sorn.
How much nicotine is in these?
You mean per use?
Yeah.
It's probably, it depends on what's a nicotine salt, so it's about 5 milligrams per dose that you put in here, which, you know. So the interesting thing about this, too, is the Juul is $45. The Sorn is $36. The Juno is $29. And My Blue, which was popular recently in your convenience stores, that were selling for $1. Why were they selling it for $1? To hook kids. Yes, hook kids so that they will continue to use this because it's such an addictive product. And Laba. Laba's a new one. I'm trying to keep up. It's really hard to keep up. But I spend part of my day looking at YouTube videos, you know, and sending, and by the way, I'm a full-time pediatrician as well. So if you look at Laba, it says buzz. Because what kids get with this is a real big buzz now. Juul, if you read the package, and I'll hand this around to you, has a special formulation called with benzoic acid, which disperses the particles to become very tiny and go into the bloodstream quickly and give a head rush. And this is what the guys tell me I talk to. The reason they do it is because this head rush makes me feel good. But now I got to keep doing it more and more and more. in the movie Smoke and Mirrors, one guy said, e-cigarettes, Juul is the heroin of e-cigarettes. It is so addictive. Another guy, Matt Murphy, who was in the New York Times, said, Juul's my 11th finger, is what he said. There's a father who actually put a kid in rehab because he was a 4-pod-a-day user, which is 4 packs a day, basically. And I don't know if you all saw that tank device that exploded, that punctured a carotid. I think it's a carotid. Maybe it was a jugular vein, but I think it was the carotid, and he died as a result of his exploding device. And exploding devices, particularly tanks, are not all that uncommon as well. So here's, if you want to look at the ingredients on this, you can see, and while the Royal College of Physicians in London say this is the best thing since sliced bread, NICE, the National Innovation and Care Excellence Center, the one who was called the Death Squad by the United States, saying that British were socialized medicine, was the group, and I can send you this from Lancet. It was in Lancet as an editorial. Is not thrilled with these devices getting people off tobacco products. And as a result, there was an interesting situation where in Britain, October is often called Stoptober. They do this movement to try to stop, like a put it out here in the United States. Well, apparently, one of the vape companies got a hold of it, started sending ads and started funding and sponsoring things, but they switched it to Swaptober, not Stoptober, okay? So this is the inane nature of keeping people addicted. Remember the gentleman said quit rates? This gentleman said quit rates from cigarettes. Well, what about quit rates from nicotine? E-cigarettes don't do that. E-cigarettes hook you, and they keep you going. That's why 80% of the people in that study in the New England Journal continue to use, even though the people in the nicotine replacement systems, gum, inhaler, and patches, they had stopped. Their quit rate was double that of e-cigarettes as a result, too. So these are very, very frightening things to me. Now, let's talk about what nicotine does to the teen brain. Number one, there's a great review article, Nicotine in the Developing Brain from 2015. It's about 10 pages long. I can send you a copy if I remember with everything else. But nicotine in and of itself exacerbates mood disorders in kids. Number two, impedes frontal lobe development. 3, rewires, from what we can tell in the journal Neuropsychopharmacology, showed that the right anterior insula, the addiction center for nicotine, is different in size and length in those teenagers, 16 to 21-year-olds who smoked versus those who didn't. They know this is the area of addiction because when you have a stroke in that area, people who are smokers stop smoking. They have no urge anymore. So that is the area that gets actually wired differently to cause this problem as well. So that's why the brain is so vulnerable, and that's why to make their money, they do it the younger they are, the more they're likely to be addicted. And convenience stores are perfect areas for exposure as well. Kids get exposed to the stuff, whether they always buy it there or not, they get exposed to it. Yes, it's behind the counter. You and me don't really look. We go get our gas. But you talk to kids, and they will list off everything behind that counter if you ask them, "What can you picture to me your typical convenience store and what's behind the counter?" Ask yourself if you can do the same thing. You can't. But that's why they have bright foil packaging. That's why they have flavors. 90% of what kids use is flavors. And let's get to menthol and mint a little bit here. Menthol and mint was exempted in 2009 from the candied cigarettes that kids were taking up like crazy. This was a negotiation tactic that Big Tobacco did with the FDA. And unfortunately, the FDA is in a corporate-friendly situation right now, so it's not as aggressive as it did in that time when they banned flavored cigarettes. And there are 1.3 million more kids who are addicted to particularly Juul in between 2017 and 2018. Now 4.9 million kids were using this garbage as well, much more than the adults would use it. I'll be honest with you, I don't care about the adults, because getting off tobacco is so hard that the focus of getting them off is only 10 to 20% may be able to do it. And who knows what the relapse rate is. Whereas not starting it in the first place prevents hardwiring your brain that ends up having the odds are against you at that point. So what I'm saying is we need to prevent, if anything. And the schools are at epidemic proportions. Mint and menthol is also targeting the African American population oftentimes. 90% of 12 to 18-year-old African American kids use menthol. And it's specifically targeted. Why? We don't know why. Menthol cools the back of your throat, so it makes it easier to smoke, and you don't cough as much as you would. And mint is the same way as well. My observations, all right, anecdotally, I have no study on this, is though I see hundreds and hundreds of kids, thousands of kids per year, when the towns I've seen restrict flavors to tobacco shops, 21 tobacco shops, and let mint and menthol stay in the convenience stores, mint becomes the number one flavor kids use in the schools. I ask over and over. Yes, they can access Mango, maybe on internet some. But you know what? I don't really care if they get it from the internet or a convenience store. I want it stopped in both areas. So, you know, this whole, it's all the convenience store, it's all the internet. No, it isn't. But they're part of the problem as well. There's no question about it. But, so, let me look at one other thing. Menthol cigarettes are as dangerous to individuals' health as non-menthol cigarettes, and menthol cigarette smokers are likely to experience premature morbidity, mortality as much as non-menthol cigarette smokers. Scientific evidence indicates that adult menthol smokers are less likely than non-menthol smokers to successfully quit smoking despite increased quit intentions and quit attempts as well. Also, on average, it takes 20% longer to try to quit a mentholated cigarette than it does a non-mentholated cigarette as well. So, you know, our kids are being targeted. It's a huge problem. And I also will show you some evidence, hand you this too, in regards to the volatile compounds in these devices. The juice is here, and the juice is here as well. All right. Remember, benzoic acid goes to benzene. Benzene's a cancer-causing agent, particularly for blood type of cancers as well. So this talks about all the different forms that they've collected in urine, heavy metals. Like, for example, this probably has lead in it. That's not good for any of us. And also cadmium and chromium as well. And that's been found in the urine of people who use this garbage as well. So they don't really know what they're taking. This is an article I wanted to show you around the whole issue that Sarah said that public health takes time. Well, 7 months after New York City put the flavor ban in flavor restrictions, they had a significant decline in the use of flavored tobacco products in their stores as well. I don't know what that 14% blip is that this gentleman who works in the tobacco industry, even though he doesn't think he does, as I've shown you with the data that we have from how CRC is funded, you know, it becomes an issue of he said, she said a little bit. But this by far shows in that time period, that ban had an effect on use of flavor in teens. And in New York and in California, there was a 50% reduction in violations post-21 in the stores 7 months after they started the process, and many of the convenience store owners were in favor at that point of 21 as well. sometimes I hear from convenience store people that it's the parents' fault, and it's all about parenting that kids do this kind of stuff. That's why parents should be punished and kids should be punished. That's an incredible fallacy. I'll venture to guess many of these convenience store owners' kids are in high school have tried Juul, because the odds are they have. 70% of kids. I walk in a room now and talk to a kid. I said, when did you try Juul? I don't ask, do you try Juul? But statistically, they already have, And I remember pulling out one of these devices in front of a mother with a kid, and I looked at the point, and he says, I don't use it. I don't use it. He was so scared because I think he knew this was in his school, and I suspect he probably used it. And I wasn't accusing him of anything. I said, and now all I do is I hand it to the kid and say, explain to your mother what this is. Every single kid can tell you what a Juul is and how it's used. Every single kid. Now, they can, about 80% of them know how a Sorin works, okay? So this is what's happening. This is an epidemic. This is the worst virus I've ever seen in my 32 years of dealing with kids. And I think it's absolutely imperative that eventually the FDA wipes all this stuff out, but it ain't going to happen until state by state we do it. And Massachusetts needs to set the agenda. Thank you. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer any of them.
I know your practice is in pediatrics and your training and so on, and as you said, you don't care about the adults. But the question I have for you with adults, and maybe you can comment on comparing the toxicities for the adults. In other words, smoking cigarettes with the tar versus whatever chemicals or the increased levels of nicotine in the electronic devices that are used.
I don't think there's any comparative data yet on that. I'm not even sure, the rationalization that taking tar out would get rid of most of the toxins. I'm sure that's true. There's arguments about that now. The logic, you pull it away, but what the nicotine is diffused in, dissolved in, is not safe. It's not helpful. So I don't have the data on adults yet. All I know is it's at best 20%, and I doubt it's really that much. 18% get off, but for how long, who knows, because they're continuing to vape. So there is definitely harm with these other products. We are already seeing, and I didn't mention this, I say to hockey players, can you tell who Juul's in your group? He says, yeah, they're all winded. Okay? They were told before that you're not going to get winded with this stuff. Well, they're getting winded. There's clear evidence now that using e-cigarettes increases your risk of having a heart attack 2.5-fold. There's more emerging evidence, and I can send it to you about
for what age group are you talking
for
about?
adults. For adults, okay, and also for emphysema. There's emerging evidence that emphysema is starting to develop with these things. History is repeating itself. That's all we're doing. The same playbook has been used with big tobacco. Wonderful book, 600 pages, Cigarette Century. If you read that, you'll feel like you're in the middle of the same thing all over again. And that's what I see happening, the deception and the lies that continue to be perpetrated. I feel bad for the retailers here that they have such a dependency upon the tobacco industry for their businesses to survive. And that's very unfortunate. I do know other tobaccos groups that have morphed. They have put a donut outlet like Dunkin' Donuts in. They have put a bakery in. They put a deli in. There was one guy who had I felt like it was a mini Walmart. There was a mechanic shop, gas station, a restaurant, and a convenience store, all in one store, all together. So, that people can be resourceful in America and change. I've had to change enormously in my practice because the cost of electronic medical records, because we're required to have them, and computers, really took a chunk out of our business. I know what it's like. I own a business. I'm one of 5 partners, and with 16 clinicians and 70 employees. So I know what it's like to see what the expenses and how that has to come out, how we have to borrow money to do it. Yes, I can relate to that. But the problem is I'm not selling a product that kills people. And the Surgeon General said, when tobacco is used as directed, It is the only legal product that kills.
For the kids who are interested in getting rid of the addiction or to stop using, how are they treated? How do you treat an addiction of the kids for nicotine?
We have no evidence yet. People are trying patches. There's no clear evidence. The adolescent substance abuse program at Children's is still in a dilemma. Sharon Levy, I know, is still in a dilemma about how to treat these kids. I've seen kids go to patches and get really sick, puking their brains out. So we really don't have good evidence other than cold turkey. And I've seen a kid, I had a kid who had it taken away, and for 3 weeks he had severe headaches. That was his withdrawal symptoms from the addiction from a Juul. And that wasn't very pleasant. Plus, as you saw, the gentleman I said, the kid that was admitted into a rehab facility, Matt Murphy, I suggest you read, if you get a chance, New York Times article, because it's quite helpful to realize. And then the gentleman where it blew up and he died. So this is not good stuff for anybody. This is not... Let me put it this way. They're saying this is an adult smoking cessation device. Lie, lie, lie. This is an adolescent nicotine addiction initiation device. That's all this is, because if you look at how it's being advertised to young kids. It is not being advertised to 50 and 60-year-olders that want to get off. Juul, this is much more rampant in my office than I'm sure it would be in an internist's office as well, because this is just crazy. And, you know, the only way we're going to stop it is by being aggressive. And by the way, I will not join a committee with a retailer and the city. I've been invited by Children's to do that, maybe for a governor's council. I have no desire. All that means to me is it's a tactic to delay. And I will refuse to be part of that with anybody, because I'm not here for money. I make no money. I'm here for the children. That's all I care about. These gentlemen are trying to make a living to raise their families. And I feel awful for them, but I also, by the same token, there are a lot more kids that are addicted to this than they have children. And so to me, the benefits far outweigh the risk. And that's why this stuff needs to be canned. So.
Would you talk a little bit more about the toxicity of mint and menthol to the lungs?
Let me show you. I have, unfortunately, yeah, okay. All right. So let me tell you about nicotine, first of all. This was a toxicogeneticist who I happened to work with at a conference. She's a PhD in North Carolina State, but lives here in Groton, Massachusetts, whose kid told her that it was only water vapor, and that began her journey a year ago. And here's what she has to say, and this talks more specifically about your question that you said. Nicotine has been shown to interact with 500 unique genes in more than 1,200 types of interactions affecting expression and modified genetic material. All right? So let me look here. It is involved in 300 biological events associated with 20 different types of cancers and indirectly over 250 type of cancers. In other young adults, nicotine has been shown to affect mental health, increasing depression, panic disorders, and the inability to experience pleasure, as well as cause sexual dysfunction. Overall, this reveals that nicotine plays a role in at least 250 different diseases, such as addiction disorders, cardiovascular diseases, and respiratory tract diseases. Okay, she could give much more of the specifics than I can because she's a toxicogeneticist. Now, mint and menthol, here's what they say about that. Despite the limited number of chemicals listed on the vape packaging products, numerous chemicals in addition to nicotine have been detected in e-liquids, e-liquid flavoring, and e-vapors. Mint and menthol e-cigarettes products specifically have been shown to contain the following chemicals: 3-hexyl Hex 1-all, acrolein, which causes popcorn lung, as you may have heard before, acetone, alpha terpenoline, benzaldehyde, benzoic acid, what I mentioned to you, benzyl alcohol, cyclotine, etc. The list goes on. These chemicals interact with over 4,700 unique genes in multiple ways, including changing gene expression, protein activation, and mutating genetic material. And these diseases include, that are involved in it, are cancer, nervous system, cardiovascular, metabolic diseases, urodenosal diseases, and mental disorders. Specific chemicals in the data set, such as formaldehyde, are classified as the EPA as a probable human carcinogen and have been shown to cause increased risk of cancer, such as myeloid leukemias. Ironically, my wife, who never smoked a day in her life, never took many cold cuts with nitrosamine, because nicotine can go to nitrosamine when it's combusted and potentially when it's vaped as well. Lived with a 4-pack-a-day smoker. My wife she developed lower abdominal pain right before she went to our clinic we have in Haiti. We've been going to Haiti since 2003. And she had to get scoped because they were going to take the stone out because they didn't want her to have episodes while she was in the rural country of Haiti, parts of Haiti. So when they went in, they found bladder cancer. Incidentally, it was a finding. And fortunately, when they removed it, as of now, and the borders are free, she's cancer-free, but the rest of her life, she will need to be monitored twice a year with cystoscopy. Nicotine is the gift that keeps on giving, and there is clear data showing that nicotine is related to bladder cancer. And so, no offense, but this pisses me off. All right. Anything else?
Board members, questions? Anyone? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We all learned a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks for making the trip. You have some materials to leave for us?
Yes, I'm going to leave it.
Good reading packet. Great.
And I have more things I will send you to that I could cite in as well. I didn't send you the genetics material stuff, but I'll send you that as well.
Bob Collette.
Bob Collette.
Thank you very much.
Bob Collette.
I think is this one of these your Jewel?
I think our twos are up here.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm sorry, I'm getting out of the way.
Oh, maybe you did pick one of them up.
All right, let me give you that one then, all right?
Sobering, huh? I know.
Thank you.
I'll say one other thing. My battle cry is for the kids.
For the kids.
That's all I'm doing this for. It's for the children. Thank you very much.
Don't
Okay.
forget the French toast.
25.
What did you think?
I could have eaten it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was dead on, actually.
All right, thank you. I'll stay in touch.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, we have anyone else?
Yeah, Bob Collette from the Regional County, do you want to just say what you found or what you do in your compliance inspections?
Okay, thanks for coming in.
I'll say that's an awfully difficult act to follow and a lot of information for everybody to digest. So in the interest of brevity, I will just say that this is absolutely a public health crisis. The use of these products is primarily occurring among young people.
Just for the people at home, can you just introduce yourself and
Yes,
your
my name is
program?
Bob Collette, Director of the Cape Cod Regional Tobacco Control Program.
Thank you.
For some reason, in 2009, when the FDA banned flavored cigarettes, they did not use expansive language to include all nicotine delivery products. And so the emergence of these products is a direct result of that inaction on the FDA's part 10 years ago. However, as was previously mentioned, this is, the marketing of these products is directly out of the tobacco industry playbook. We've seen all of this before. And as we may have mentioned before in prior discussions about your regulations, the industry spends, and this is extracted directly from tobacco industry documents secured by the Attorneys General settlement back in 1999. They spend 95% of their advertising dollars on 14-year-olds. So we know where their money's going, who they're targeting, knowing that within 2 weeks of enticing a young person to start using any sort of nicotine delivery product, that person is likely to be addicted for an average of 20 years. In fact, they refer to the kids in their documents as replacement smokers. So we're just seeing this all over again. All the work that's been done in the past 25 years in the tobacco control arena has now been erased by the proliferation of these products. We're in very high demand to come speak to all of the schools. We've been to almost all of the high schools across the Cape and off Cape because the staff and administrators at those places are absolutely flabbergasted as to how to handle the problem. We're about 3 years behind the curve. The kids were using this stuff long before anybody really knew it. They can do it undetectedly. They think it's harmless and that it's just some kind of harmless water vapor. So a lot of education has been done. It continues to happen. Some positive actions are being taken by the schools, but we're really overwhelmed with requests for information and education presentations and so forth. So I applaud your efforts in trying to move forward on this topic. There was a lot of information shared today. I won't reiterate all of it, but I will certainly be here for all of your future discussions to help contribute and answer any questions that you may have. And at this moment, if you had any as well.
Are you doing any work in the middle schools? That's probably the place to start.
Well, the middle school, what we're permitted to do contractually is to speak to staff, and that would include teachers, administrators, and nurses, of course. We can't directly speak to kids because there's no science that supports, that evidence-based data that support that it's effective. So DPH prefers a peer mentor approach, and they do have a program in place that teaches kids to speak to other kids about these types of things. However, we are working with middle schools as well, and that's the age to really start at.
No, thanks for coming in.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
A lot to think about. We'll see you next time.
We have a lot to deal with here.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, take a deep breath, everyone. We're going to move along. Let's go.
Well, I just have a point of clarification. We did say our next meeting's the 25th, and February 25th at 4, and at that time, would the board be looking at potential regulation for discussion, or further listening, or inviting speakers, or is there any direction that you would like me to look into? I did put a draft regulation based on Somerville and Needham in the board's packet just for discussion purposes, but I can put that on the next agenda to further discuss.
What do people want to do?
I think sounds good. Next meeting,
To do what?
to discuss the proposed.
Something similar to either Needham and Somerville, just for discussion. Doesn't mean the board can go forward with it.
Right.
It's discussion only.
Right.
Everyone feel that way?
Yes.
Okay.
We have told people that it would be, at least 2 meetings of discussion, again on March 11th at 4, and then the board will then decide from there which way it wishes to proceed.
So you're not saying it will be a hearing on the February 25th?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think the board probably on the 25th needs to look at the draft regulation and saying, yes, we would like this, or change it.
Right.
The policy in the board in the past is usually to have 2 public hearings once the board determines
Right.
you're comfortable with the regulation. So we might even be into April for, this could be a couple-month discussion.
Right, if there's going to be 2 hearings after Well, this is a decision not to do anything, then it'll be
That's-
pretty straightforward.
Correct.
Yeah. So, okay.
All right, so I'll put that for a discussion at the next meeting.
Yeah,
then.
good. Okay.
Very good.
I think we're on schedule. I had it as 5:30 for the fourth item on the agenda. That's discussion, the recycle committee, polystyrene reduction.
Can we
by
take a
law.
1-minute break to let people out of the hearing room before you go to
By all
recycle?
means, take your time if anyone's leaving. Okay.
my God.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll start up until you get up there. Okay, thanks for coming in.
I think you can discuss it all you want. I think I've heard enough.
Well, let's assume we're back up. Okay, looks like we are. Okay, fourth item on the agenda is discussion recycle committee, and that has to do with the polystyrene reduction bylaw. Director Murphy, anything you want to say before we
No,
kick
this
off
is
here?
a meeting with several people from the Recycle Committee that the board's met with in the past on plastic bags and recycling in general. And they're looking to tackle polystyrene, and they're just starting. And this is probably the first of a couple meetings with the board as they go forward to draft a town bylaw. So I think they can explain where we sit. You have some information they provided to us in your packet.
Yeah, thank you for the information. Just for the record, everyone introduce themselves again.
I'm Carol Ewing. I'm co-chair of the Yarmouth Recycling and Solid Waste Advisory Committee.
Jill Talladay, the other co-chair.
Roby Whitehouse, Waste Management Superintendent for the Town of Yarmouth.
Welcome. The floor is yours.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, you have received this polystyrene ban for Yarmouth, right? That So,
We have it.
okay, I just want to
Thank
make
you.
sure. I'll go through quickly what's down here for the folks who are watching. We're looking to reduce polystyrene, particularly with food containers, takeout containers, brown bag, not brown bag, what am I saying? Doggy bag, that's what I was thinking of. Containers that people take home from restaurants. We'd like to reduce them, actually eliminate them, because they're, first of all and foremost, they're a health hazard. They're made from polystyrene. The styrofoam is the brand name. Polystyrene is the generic name. And polystyrene is made from styrene, which is a carcinogen. Actually, I think the...
Excuse me,
Yes.
people at home may not know what that means, a carcinogen.
It causes cancer. Actually, the Department of Health and Human Services in 2016 said styrene is, in quotes, reasonably anticipated to be a human carcinogen. And particularly, it's active when it comes in contact with hot items like food. So the carcinogen part of it comes out more readily if it's heated, as people often do with takeout items that they bring home and they pop in the microwave. So that's a major concern, I think, for the Board of Health. For us, it's also a huge litter problem. It's very light. As you probably have noticed, I hate to say it, Dunkin' Donuts and Wendy's and other styrofoam coffee cups are constantly turning up in our roadways and at the dump, blowing around. Because it's so light, it blows very easily, often into waterways, and then breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces of styrene, which are eaten by fish, et cetera, as are other plastics. It doesn't biodegrade. It's just remains in our environment, just in smaller and smaller forms. Many people wonder why we can't recycle it. Many of it has a recycling triangle, number 6 on it. It can be recycled, but it has to be super clean. Now, we're talking about things that will have food in them, so they will not be clean. And there is not really a market, I think Roby can speak to this too, in the immediate area, certainly not in the Cape. I don't think anywhere in the state, as a matter of fact. So it's not a really economically a viable way to do recycling. So it isn't recycled very often. Now, 4 towns on the Cape already have banned polystyrene containers, food containers. Dennis in 2017, Wellfleet in June of 2018. Provincetown will become effective in June of 2019, Orleans in 2020. They're all pretty much the same, and I think we have not written a bylaw. We would have brought that to you, but we wanted to get your input. But they cover mostly the same things, and I think ours would be based on what, particularly Orleans, which is the last one to have been passed, has done. But they target food establishments as well as retail and public establishments that serve prepared foods, and that would include schools. prohibit single-use cups, plates, lids, utensils, and straws, as well as the containers themselves. So you have your coffee cup, and the lid would be prohibited as well. They specify none of these bylaws include packing materials like peanuts and that kind of thing. It's only food containers that would be affected. Ice chests, styrofoam containers for picnics and so on would not be affected. All four of these specify enforcement by a town police officer or an agent of the Board of Health. And so far, I've talked to the people in Dennis, and Jill has talked to those in Wellfleet, people in recycling committees. No one has reported any problems in enforcing the bans that are already in effect in those two towns. So that's generally what we're looking for. We wanted to come before you to see if you had any concerns, any ideas of how we could make this stronger, or what
are they using alternately in those towns instead of that?
Mostly they're paper-based products that can decompose. I know some restaurants in Yarmouth are already using them, but they're much preferable to the styrofoam.
And some plant-based products for the cutlery and all.
Yes, bamboo is one that I've seen, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What about in public venues? What will happen there, whether it's town hall here or
Any
recreational
place,
areas?
A public venue like a beach would be, is that the kind of thing you're talking about? That would be affected as well. That's
You mean
included.
like a concession stand?
A concession stand at the beach?
So are you asking whether town employees within town buildings would be required to not use styrofoam containers?
No, I didn't say that. Thank you for the
Do you
record.
serve food?
Clarifying. Thank you.
We'll have a monitor at the front door to pick it right up if you're carrying it.
Oh, yeah, we'll have radar. I think mostly it's all about the restaurants that are serving large quantities.
I can read what food establishments mean, if you'd like. This is from Wellfleet's. Any operations including without limitation food trucks, schools, farmers markets, and other public venues that store, prepare, package, and serve and vend. Otherwise provide food for human consumption. Public venues shall mean operations including but not limited to meeting halls, churches, town offices, the senior center, recreation department, library, and in this case, the Wellfleet Elementary School.
So you were on.
But that's how Wellfleet has written it. That does not mean
Right.
you have to do it that way.
Well, what are your thoughts on that? I'm not looking at you. There have three people up there. Anyone? What do you think?
I'm thinking.
What are our thoughts on?
Well, they just listed a whole lot of. Was it in Wellfleet? Yeah.
Yes, Wellfleet.
On the public venues, what takes place there? What's their intention there? Do you think?
Like oyster
Yeah. That's one big one.
I think they're
Yeah.
I think
they're casting a wide net.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which-
And I can see food being served in a church supper or something like that.
Right.
So
I think it's actually a really good thing because, quite honestly, I'm hearing from a lot of committees that, or organizations that are looking for the most compostable way to serve food, and I don't mean the food itself. I mean they're looking for the utilities. They're looking for the plates, the napkins. How can we compost this? And they're looking to actually bring it to the disposal area and compost it. And sadly, we don't have the facility for that. But they're actually going that step. So these are organizations that are really looking in that direction. So I'm not really sure that this net is that far, that far stream. I think that we're definitely have some organizations who are really looking to do that. So if it means that this is the direction that the board or that the recycling committee wants to go, then I don't think it's a bad thing.
Are we speaking or you're speaking? Anyone? Come on.
We're looking for feedback from you.
No.
Feedback
Okay.
from you.
What about how much time do these businesses need, do you think, to kind of get rid of it, and how to get rid of it?
Well, I think we'll probably look at a year's time. I think
Okay.
that's what these previous bylaws that are in effect now have done. They've given a year, at least 6 months to a year. I think a year is a good idea to allow restaurants to use up what they have, first of all, and then purchase research. And we hope to do some research, too, to help out restaurants and other venues so they'll have suitable substitutes for the polystyrene.
Certainly what we did back in 2014 with the change in the tobacco regulations, just giving these businesses time.
Right.
How's the enforcement been? Like Dennis, I think has been the one that's had the longest.
They reported no issues with enforcement.
So the restaurants did it and they didn't have an issue? I guess it's a good thing.
Just on the coffee cups, you'd be going back to a paper coffee cup to go?
That's what I get.
Okay.
Paper
And what are they putting on?
Or bring your own, even
Bring your
better.
own. And what do they put for a lid then?
I don't know. I have not been to Dennis.
I'm just wondering what Dennis was
Yeah.
doing if you can't use a plastic lid on the paper cup.
I
what-
don't know.
If they make a,
Yeah, like a corn base.
I think Honeydew is using, like Jill just commented, a corn-based product that it appears to be a plastic cover, but I don't think it really is plastic. I think it's definitely an investigation process, and we'll follow up more with Dennis and try to find out what the restaurants and what the organizations are doing over there. It'll be part of this process of researching this. I think the year is maybe a year and a half might be a better outlook, to tell you the truth, because we definitely want to give everyone an opportunity to get educated and do their research and potentially do large quantity, procurement, whether it's multiple restaurants procuring together in order to buy the stock that's needed, in order to get the equity or the economy of scale in pricing,
Right.
or the recommendations is that we're hoping to meet with some facilities and some restaurants in Yarmouth and Dennis and ask them for solutions or ask them how they succeeded, and maybe share that information with our restaurants and our facilities here in Yarmouth.
Have you got any word from them just about the added expense for them? In other words, to using different products. What have you heard so far?
No, we have.
We have not yet.
We have not. That's
No.
why we're looking to
Nothing.
get
Okay.
some feedback from them so that we can.
Okay.
We're actually looking to get this on the warrant for 2020, so we are already starting ahead of a
Great.
year hence from May.
The stores in general that you go into, the large commercial stores, they still sell on the shelves polystyrene cups and paper plates. Would they be banned? Right now, you can go in the markets. You can
Right.
go at convenience stores, the bigger
Stack them.
markets. You can get them. So would that be included in your regulation?
That has not been included in any of these. We could specifically exclude them if we choose to. That's a good question.
That's a very good question.
What about straws?
There are other materials that can be used for straws besides plastic.
Used to be paper only.
Right.
Yeah, I've been reading about it, just thinking of people with disabilities, people with facial paralysis or have movement disorders, a variety of them. It's an issue. One of the things with silicone, actually, that people could buy them and keep them.
Right.
Would seem to be a little,
Yeah, I'm involved with the straw program, Skip the
great.
Straw program, and I mean we don't encourage anyone if they need it, but if you're concerned about if you have a disability, encouraging people to bring what they need with them. But
Yeah.
there are many choices that are in between a plastic straw and a metal straw or something like that it can be reused, but might be difficult for someone with a disability. But like you suggest, silicone. There are some really good paper straws that have they hold up well in fluids. So, but yeah, educating the restaurants and alternatives to be sure that they take care of those that need them.
You can remember the people who don't have use of their upper extremities. How do you get the fluid into your mouth?
Right.
I mean, tough.
And why do we need it when we do have use of our upper extremities? Why do we need straws?
I think that's a key too, is also working with the restaurant establishments to, or any other facility that hands out drinks. Ask, do you need a straw? You know, rather than just automatically setting it in front of people.
Right.
Straws
Education.
are not recyclable. Straws are not recyclable here in the town of Yarmouth. As a matter of fact, if they do end up in our recycling stream, they end up becoming a hindrance to the recycling facility. So we're seeing straws over and over and over contaminating our recycling stream. Not to get into a recycling thing, but it's just...
That's what we are.
Well, that's right. It's where we live, so we spend a
Yeah,
lot of
wood
time
stove
thinking
comes
about
in.
those things.
You mentioned about the lids. That's kind of important in that we've all been in the car and the top wasn't put on well from wherever you got it, and then it's all over your lap, and it's a hot fluid, so sometimes they don't stick on well.
Of course, the best solution is to bring your own cup.
Yes.
And then you can make sure that the lid is on. So.
And I can also say that there is an organization that's working on cooperative purchasing with more and more businesses that are looking to do this.
Cool.
So the intention is to make it more affordable so that people can buy things as part of a group.
Nice to find out how that can happen, take place. You know, there's from other towns that have learned from it to kind of organize that. If you're a restaurant by yourself, you may not know where to start, but that can make a huge difference to your budget.
It is expensive.
Yeah. What else are we not asking or commenting on that we should be so far to make sure when you leave here you're satisfied?
It sounds like, because you're not asking a lot of negative questions, it almost sounds like your committee is in favor. And that's really what we're looking for. We want to know that we have your support. We already feel confident that the Board of Selectmen has asked us that question. Where are we going with polystyrene? They've asked us that question. So they've indicated that it's a direction that they're looking to find out where we're going with it. So we're looking to find out what your feelings are.
I'm fine with saying I'm in favor of it and encourage you. I'm only one member here, but I don't know how other people feel.
That's good, because I'm sure
Multiple heads
the
nodding,
board will
yeah.
ask us, you know, what you folks are thinking, and do we have your support? So that's really a good thing to know.
If it happened tomorrow, I'd be okay with it. How's that?
I'll second that,
Thank
sure.
you, Charlie.
Have you met with the schools yet at all? Because I know they use a lot
It's
in
a
their
lot of
luncheon. There's a
styrofoam,
cost to them up there. I think that's important to meet with the schools.
But at least they're not into takeout containers, right?
What do they
Because that's
use at
got to
the
be a big
schools?
expense.
All the
Yeah.
all the
Everything they
cups,
use is
bowls, and trays
Trays are all-
all styrofoam
Oh,
and
my
get thrown out 3 times a day. This is at DY High. I'm not sure about the other schools.
So there's a large cost then to get them into budget preparations. And can they switch over? I think it's important that you meet with them before you come back to the board here.
I think that's a great idea. I've actually been working with the DY Regional Administration on a new contract for their waste management. So this is definitely one of the key items that I will be talking to them about, and I'll definitely be bringing our recycling committee into that conversation.
Have you checked the stores in town that have the polystyrene? Like if you buy fish or chicken, it's usually on a pad. Some of them have switched over to paper, but I know, have you done your survey yet to see?
We have not done. We intend to do a survey.
Okay.
We have not yet done that. All 4 of these existing bans exempt foods, raw foods that are on polystyrene. So those continue to be used in those towns.
But some of them have switched over already.
Yeah. Well, I would love to see them all do that.
But I don't know how else. Okay.
What did they switch over to?
Paper, butcher paper.
It's like a heavy cardboard
Yeah,
paper.
like or
Yeah.
cardboard, yeah.
Yeah, I know a couple of them have. So, well, I'll ask one more question. It's more plastic, but on the nip bottles, that's what we get a lot of concerns on everywhere. Is that a separate than this regulation, or can you make it a separate regulation? Any other towns addressing that?
Not that well, I shouldn't say that. I know that they have been banned in some towns off Cape.
And who banned them? Or the selectmen banned them? Is that?
I think it was. I can't tell you off the top of my head. It's Chelsea and Revere, interestingly enough, have both banned them.
I mean, I'd hope that'd be something the recycle committee could look at, maybe bring to the selectmen and support from the board, because that's what I see around town a lot.
I agree with you totally.
Yeah, if
It's
you walk a
also
dog, you know.
Yeah, well, it's also a public safety issue, if you ask me.
We did the year we did the we cleaned up Yarmouth.
Yeah,
and I had to do Sandy Pond.
Yeah.
And my daughter and I got like 2 full trash bags full of nip bottles.
Well, I was
It was very eye-opening for an 11-year-old.
I was on the mid-cape, it was backed up. I was in the left lane, and you could see all the nips that were on the grass on the left side there.
And unfortunately, they can't even be recycled.
Yeah.
They're too small. They fall through the machinery. So it's just.
There was a bill to ban them, and I think the bill got buried.
In the
I think
state?
there, I think
Yeah,
there,
it's
yes,
a
there were
statewide
there were
ban.
many other important things that were taking precedence. So,
But it was actually to add a deposit.
Yeah,
It wasn't to ban it, but it was
to
add a
ban them.
deposit.
I would prefer to ban them myself.
You said right now Yarmouth cannot handle the compostables. Is that something that might happen in the future then, if we get all of these establishments to use compostable materials?
that's a really great question. It's something we could look at, but unfortunately, a paper plate basically is compostable already.
Mm-hmm.
And if you compost it in your backyard and it's contained, it won't fly all over the place. And that is one of our concerns, is that if these items that are compostable are flyaway also, it will just add to the debris that's flying around the property. So right now, what we compost is grass and leaves only.
Mm-hmm.
And adding those things in the future is not something that I have a plan for, but if it's something that can be done, we'll certainly look at it. I mean, if somebody comes to us and has a contained area that we could potentially compost, we'll definitely look at it. But I'd love to see people composting in their backyard.
Can the paper plates, paper cups be recyclable then with mixed paper?
No, they cannot.
Do you want to just explain that, what goes in with?
Napkins, tissues, paper towels, Kleenex, toilet paper, paper plates, paper cups. None of those items can be included with mixed paper. They have food contaminants and bacteria on them, and they cannot
You're
be
working on
included.
like a brochure to...
I have
get that
lots
out
of
there.
brochures. There are lots of things that cannot be recycled, and
Yeah.
sadly, the list is so long that it's difficult to come up with an accurate list. We're trying really hard to come up with a list with what can be recycled, because it's a much shorter list. But those are things that we're seeing on a regular basis. All of those paper products that you use to touch your body or you put food on are not recyclable. So the recyclable papers are more like paper, and cardboard. That is any type of cardboard. We'll take it.
I wanted to give you that plug because a lot of people at home think it's paper. It goes in there, and each town's a little different too. It seems like possibly,
And it's changing all
and
the
it's
time.
changing all the time.
Plastic bags are also not recyclable at the Town of Yarmouth disposal area and recycle area. However, grocery stores, I believe, are still taking them. But today I looked in our commingled container and it was full of plastic bags. And it wasn't the ones from the grocery store. It was plastic bags that would have contained sleeves of toilet tissue, or just plastic that people thought it's plastic.
You've got so much of the public thinking recycled now. It's hard to have them back off a little bit,
Being
is what I've seen.
discriminating.
Yeah. It's a good challenge for you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, are you happy leaving here? You're set? Okay, we just want to make.
So I guess
make
I
a
guess
contribution here.
Yeah, the way I see it, you're going to do some meeting with the schools. You're going to do a survey of what's going out there now. Look at what they can sell in the retail and stores. Work on a draft regulation, then probably come back to us in a couple
We'll
months.
get back to you with a draft.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Can I just-
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just plug my next recycling information session now that I've got you all here? The next recycling information session will be Friday, March 8th, from 1:30 to 3:30 at the Yarmouth Senior Center. And At the last session, there were standing room only. So people want to know, and I hope that anyone who's listening will come and hear and ask questions. And we'll be also hearing from a hazardous waste professional about our clean water, too. So lots of good stuff. Thank you.
What time?
1:30 to 3:30 on Friday, March 8th at the Yarmouth Senior Center.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I read about some restaurants in California that are using fettuccine as coffee stirrers.
Okay.
Isn't that a great idea? It is.
We're up to number 5 here. Protect our Cape Cod aquifer. And this has to do with the banning pesticides on town property, Roundup or similar products with glyphosate.
How am I here?
Glyphosate. I didn't do that much better. Worse. Okay.
Now you know why I love my wood stove. I recycle everything.
Okay. Mr. Murphy.
Yes.
You have anything to say?
This has been on the, yes, this has been on our board packet for meetings, the last couple meetings, and the board's done research, and we've retained information from various departments through town and found out it's been used very minimal. Licensed applicators and basically used to control Phragmites when they've had to, in certain areas of poison ivy on the walking trails or at the camps. So it's not a heavy use in town. I'd call it a very minimal use. Conservation Committee has looked at it, and they looked at it last Thursday, and they issued an updated position where they did not feel that there was a problem with minimal use, and I have that to pass out to you now. So if you could just pass one of these down to everybody. This just came out from last Thursday to today. You can take a minute to read it, and it has their recommendations on the back. So why don't I just give everybody a minute on that?
Is there any suitable replacement? Have they thought of anything that?
Not as effective.
Okay, and it's being used very minimal and by responsible people.
Correct, and
All right,
it's used on like a swipe and cut direct
understand.
application, not
so
in the past where they might have sprayed and so forth, or a backpack. This is direct application. Matter of fact, the Conservation Commission has a contract with a licensed applicator to be used at certain locations. So it's more effective. There's nothing else. I think there's other products that Eric can probably talk to, but I think there's a more cost to it. So the selectmen are really asking the Board of Health and Conservation and other departments what's their position, or their request to the selectmen is it should be banned on all town properties. So that would just put us, the town, to using more costly and a chemical to control those different items.
I'm inclined to basically leave it just the way it is myself, unless
I am.
Nothing like we're using a huge amount of it, and until they can find a replacement, we got to use something, basically. So.
Why do you think there's such an emphasis on application and trying to be so detailed that way? My reaction is there's got to be a reason for that, in the sense of associated risk with it. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a need for it. It's not because of the expense of it. It's not a particularly expensive product, really. So that bothers me, that there's so much concern about how it's applied. So it comes down to, risk versus benefit, I guess. I mean, I can keep talking. No one else is. So,
I'm sorry. I think a lot of the concern is, you talk about application method, is it being used as directed? And I think that's where a lot of the concern lies when you read the laboratory studies on rats and, were they exposed in large quantity or small quantity? And it seems like that made a lot of the difference in their research and their findings, so.
All right. Well, I guess I beg to differ a little bit on that. And I don't think the science is very good of what's out there. I spent some time looking for literature, studies that I had a whole lot of confidence in. A lot of it's very old, from the 80s, where a lot of the studies on a particular chemical here, but it's very hard to test them in that a lot of each product has other agents in it that enable it to work better or worse, and it's hard to get that information from companies. It was a piece of thing that you sent out. It was like 750 products, I think, out there that have the same chemical. So it's very difficult to know what does it do and what it doesn't do. Looking at, you read the literature, you hear a lot of possible or probable, causes of cancer. The biggest one was the World Health Organization, who used the word probable. So I have trouble with it. We're talking about trying to reverse something that's natural. We're trying to, yes, aesthetically, it's very nice, or use of the seashore, but we're trying to control something that's naturally happening on the planet. We're adding synthetic chemicals that we don't know ultimately what they're going to be doing. And just as a, as a Board of Health member, I have trouble supporting it if there are concerns about the effects of the chemicals. In that, I see our mission is protecting the health of individuals living here, and in many ways, we talk about the health of the environment, but a lot of that has to do with the quality of how we're living and the effects of it. How the environment, influences us and our health. So I think it's important that people think about that. In other words, once again, it's risk versus benefit. We don't really know what the product does. I think it's relevant in some ways. We spent an hour talking about nicotine and using the Juul product and what other chemicals are in there. We don't really know what's going to happen in the long range with people who are going to be vaping a lot. We don't know where that's going, the effects of it. We went through this with tobacco for decades. You had the tobacco companies saying that everything's fine, it's good. Monsanto has done that for years. Same article that you sent out, they were responsible for Agent Orange. I know people who, applied it in Vietnam. Everything seemed okay about it. Well, it didn't turn out that way. So there's a lot of unknowns that are bothering me. So I'm not sure I can support the use of it on our own properties here. It's just my feeling. And it may be more expensive. Probably have to use labor in order to take care of it, to what degree we may need. So that's just my opinion. As a board, we need to come up with something, vote on what information we want to send to the selectmen.
Correct.
Yeah, so I think that's important. So at some point tonight, we need to vote, and what do we want to vote on? So that information we'll write up, and we'll include the vote and whatever, but selectmen are looking for a recommendation, whether, I guess, how to use the product, not to use it, or whatever. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. This is the time for discussion. Or someone can make a motion, and we can do it after that. Keep in mind, and I say this periodically, when you make a motion, or even if you second a motion, it doesn't tell you which way you're going to vote on something. So if you want to get something on the table, you can make a motion, or you can second someone else's motion. It doesn't mean you're in favor or you are voting yes for it. It's just to move the process along. If someone doesn't make a motion or it doesn't get second, then it's lost. There is no decision on it, and I think we can't do that, or we should not be doing that. I guess we could, just tell the selectmen, the Board of Health has no opinion, or was unable to provide an opinion. I mean, that supposedly could happen. I don't think that's the way we want to conduct business here.
I'll make a motion. I move that we recommend to the Board of Selectmen that town staff continue to explore effective alternatives to the use of glyphosate, and that they work on public education about the risks associated with the overuse and improper use of all chemical herbicides. In the meantime, formulate a policy, a townwide policy, that allows for the current use with the careful techniques and minimal quantities that the different agencies in the town, departments in the town have outlined that they are currently using, and that no other additional use be allowed.
Just one comment. How is the best way for that to get into the minutes? In other words, that was a long motion.
I got some of it, and Christine.
I don't know if it's circling lines or whatever, but it's important that we know what we're voting on. I'm not criticizing you. I'm just saying I'm looking at you, Christine, of what are you going to do with that? It's recorded somewhere, but
okay.
I think. How do you want to handle that?
What's basically said, right?
Right. I mean, I'm endorsing what the Conservation Commission said, but I am asking that, in addition, that there be no further or additional use of that chemical allowed in town beyond what is being used now. So that last paragraph from the Conservation Commission, I wouldn't say we support the policy of minimized and judicious use and no additional use.
I think it sounds fine. I just haven't copied it all. I don't know if you could write it out or talk slower.
Sure.
We'll try it again. You want to hear it again?
The way that she said it just now, she supports what the commissioners endorsed. Is that correct? Like the Conservation Committee?
I support the policy of minimized and judicious use of glyphosate in the town, as has been outlined by the departments that reported to the selectmen, not just the Conservation Commission.
Oh, okay.
And we recommend that there be a townwide policy put in place, and that the town staff continue to explore alternatives to the use of glyphosate and look at ways to educate the public about the improper and overuse of all chemical herbicides.
We can check the tape on that. I can clarify that. That's fine. That'll be fine. That'll be fine.
Okay. So, anyone second the motion?
Second.
Good. Okay. So, any discussion? I don't think the town's going to do the investigation of what's new
Staff.
or product-wise. Who's going to do that?
Town staff.
Who
The departments
specifically?
who are using it. Department staff. The staff of the departments who are currently using the glyphosate.
To be proactively researching to find alternative. Okay. Any other discussion? So, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye. Okay. Nay. So it's 4-1.
4-1.
Okay, I can help with you. We can.
All right, we can look at the, Christine, we can look at the tape and slow it down, and then I'll make sure we copied it correctly. And
Right. Just let me know what you got, and I'll
Yeah.
make sure that it...
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, good.
Good.
All right. So the next item is approval of the minutes. That was a meeting from a while ago. That was August 20th. It was in your packet. Anyone have any corrections?
Nope.
I had sent two things. Did that, Christine? I got these pretty simple things. One of them was just a spelling. The other one had to do, if anyone's interested, on the bottom of page 2, it talked about the attorney being excused. By me, it was probably that attorney recusing himself, would be my guess. I don't really.
Oh.
I remember the events there, but.
Right.
So,
I
anyone else?
don't, and I haven't had a chance to look at the notes, and Amy is on vacation. That
Well,
took the notes.
That's good for her.
Yes.
Yes.
Refreshing her, so.
Yes. After this, for sure. Anyone else? Have anything else? Have they looked over the minutes?
Do you want to approve them as corrected?
Yeah, let's do that.
I move that we approve the minutes of the August 20th, 2018 Board of Health meeting as corrected.
Second.
Well, who are we going to give that to? Who seconded it?
I think Charlie beat me.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay, I
Charlie's
agree
on a
with
roll.
that. Good. All in favor? Say
Aye.
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 Good.
All right, well,
Yeah, good.
okay, we're on it.
Good.
Okay, old and new business. We're actually doing quite well here.
Yes, we
time-wise.
are. I guess a point of information, just kind of follow back up on the minutes there, that discussion was with the proposed gas station on Station Ave by Cumberland Farms.
Right.
They have withdrawn, I think I've let the board know
Yes.
that withdrawn, and Sunoco wishes to go in there, that I think the board knows about, and we had sent them to Water Department, their consultant, to get information. They are in the process of hiring a licensed professional site evaluator to work with the Water Department to get a recommendation on the use going in with the drinking water supply back to us. Since then, because they were transferring the tank locations from the small Sunoco gas station right on the corner, they wanted to transfer those tanks up. They have now also included the Shell station across the street and buying those tanks and moving those tanks. So they're taking tanks from 2 gas stations into the new one that they proposed. So when they combine what they're looking for, that's going to be 16,000 gallons less fuel between all the stations now. So they're looking at that with the Water Department. There's still some zoning issues and setbacks, but environmentally they've reduced the 2 stations by 16,000, and that will come back to us, to the board, in a month, maybe month and a half. We'll see that again.
So that's the storage gallons.
The tanks
It's
would be-
not- it's
correct.
not the usage. In other words, what kind of
Correct.
station is there and the volume of people coming in?
They would remove the tanks from both those sites.
Are they going to remove the stations, or they're going to?
They're not sure what they're going to do. I think both stations, the smallest station would definitely be left as, from what I understand now, as a repair shop. The other Shell station, they're not sure what they're going to redevelop that to. It might just stay a repair shop.
Okay.
They're not sure how they're going to redevelop that. If they redevelop it something besides a repair shop or retail, such as, let's say, food service, they might have difficulties of nitrate loading. So it might be difficult to do too much redevelopment, but obviously they can continue what they're doing. So that was just at an informal, formal site plan review last Tuesday that was discussed.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So I have nothing else pending. We may have one septic variance repair that I need to look at that Amy left on my desk before she left. So I'm going to take a look at that. We know we have tobacco on our next meeting, so I'll take a look at that and discuss it with you, Mr. Chairman. The one septic repair variance, well, I can let the whole board know. It's up on Wood Street, and the issue is the town drainage pipe that the town put in. We have several on that street that the board's already granted variances to because we've done the best we can, and there's nothing more you can do because the pipe is in the street and that drains into the wetland. So I think we don't quite meet the 70 feet that you've granted us. I think it's more like 60 or 65.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I think we've done several of them just to notify abutters, and that's the question is, I can look at that again and see if that's close to what the board's intent is, so we can move that along. It's a tough one. They put the drainage right down one side of the street, and all those houses are just jammed up. And they've moved it as far as they can get it away, but there's still, made it as skinny and long as you can, but it's still right there.
Anything else that's new and old?
No, everything else is going fine. You can take a look in the new office is being renovated, our front entrance way, so it's
Nice double doors there.
double doors, exciting. We can get more people in.
So you can fit a couple more people
We
in?
get more people in all the time to see Christine
people
right
waiting
there.
there, too.
We can do 3 or 4 people at a time now.
Geez, you'll have to shovel off your desk.
Yeah.
Okay. Any motions to adjourn at this point?
I motion we adjourn.
Second?
Second?
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Good job. Thank you, everyone.
Paying attention.